What's up guys, this is Evan with Backwoods Adventure Mods. Today I'm excited to show you our brand new product. It's our 5th gen 4Runner, that's 2010 to current, full length aluminum DRIFTR series roof rack. Let's look at some of the details. Alright, this is a full length all aluminum roof rack. It won't require any drilling, it's a direct bolt on. We beefed up the thickness to 1/4 inch due to the extra length of the vehicle, and the front fairing is also 1/4 inch. We use these triple slotted extrusions for mounting any accessories you're going to put up there, like a tent or solar, whatever else it may be. And we include some of these roll-in slide nuts. Take a look at the hardware kit over here. It's broken down into whichever stage of the installation you're at. For example, there's a kit for the front fairing, rear fairing, the extrusions, etc. Here are the mounts that connect the roof rack to the vehicle, and then there are some plastic and rubber isolators that go between the mount and the vehicle's roof. Lastly, we include some edge trim for the front fairing. Take a look at the side panels. You'll see this hole here. You can use this as just a handle, a grab point as you're climbing up, but also these holes here fit the Agency 6 grab handle, so that's a direct bolt on. Also, these slots and 1/4 inch holes run the full length of the side. This is where your extrusions bolt in, so depending on what your rooftop setup is, it's completely adjustable all the way from the front to the back. The front fairing on the top has these slots here that you can use carriage bolt hardware for attaching lights or any other storage options you might want to put up top. Same with the rear fairing, it has those as well. These are little knockouts. If you want to run lights in the back, you just cut these little tabs and you've got a light hole. The little Baja Designs light will fit right in there after you cut these tabs and use this slot to bolt it in. Before we start the installation on this rig, we're going to cut away to a previous video that we took while testing the prototype, and that clip will show you how to remove the OEM roof rack. First thing we're going to do is remove the OEM roof rails. We did have the crossbars, we removed them previously, but you'll have the opportunity to take those out after you pull the hardware, or you can just leave the whole thing assembled and lift it off all as one. But the first thing you have to do is take off these plastic end caps, and they're just snapped in, but they're really in there. I don't recommend prying on the sides like you may see. You have a pretty good chance of putting a dent on the side of the roof here. So I use a trim tool or a screwdriver, and I like to pry from the inside, kind of where the track is. You'll pop it off the inside, then kind of roll it off the outside. So you can see there's 2 clips on each side. They're just really tight. Then it's a 13mm socket to take out the factory bolts. And you just do the same thing on the other 3. So this is Mo's 4Runner, and he had a different roof rack on it previously. So we've already pulled off the old mounts and carved out the old silicone. So this is the mounting area prepped and ready to go. We'll start with our mounts. All right, let's take a look at some of the mounting hardware. You'll see 2 different kinds of blocks here. This first one is used for the front only. It's a softer material, it's kind of a rubber, and it has 2 countersunk holes bored into the flat side and through the short side. We'll set that aside, we'll only use those on the front 2. The back 2 on each side uses these more rigid blocks, and they have through holes drilled all the way through the long edge of it. So you're going to take one of these and one of these brackets, and these are all the same. We're going to use the supplied hardware, and we're going to use some silicone. So put the flat washer on the bolt, and then we're going to use some silicone around and in the holes. I don't really see any problem with overdoing this. Personally, I would rather have too much silicone than have a leak inside my rig. Stick that on there. Then I'm going to put some on the threads as well. At this point, all we want to do is just get the hardware assembled. We don't want to tighten it down because you're going to need this loose to complete the installation. Okay, I'm going to snug that down so that I can still adjust this, and I'm going to repeat on the other 3. All right, we've got the 4 rearward mounts bolted down, just loose enough to be able to slide them. The front mounts, we're going to do a little pre-assembly. We won't need these yet, but while we're messing with them, we might as well put them together. So it's countersunk because The side with the big hole is what's actually going to contact the roof, so we obviously don't want the bolt head scratching it. So put the bolt in from that direction. And then from the bottom up like this, and we're going to use a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut. And these I'm just going to basically center left to right and go ahead and tighten it down. You'll need a 5/32 Allen and a 7/16 wrench. Next step is to attach the side rail. So I've prepped my hardware. We're working out of that same kit. I've put a flat washer on each of the two 1/4 20 by 1 inch black bolts. We're going to run those through these two slots there into the bracket, and then we'll put on a flat washer, lock washer, nut, and then I'm going to immediately go to the back and do the same thing at the rear mount, and that'll have this thing secured. So be careful not to scratch your roof. Same thing back here. We're going to use this front set of slots for the front bracket, and we're just going to kind of put them in loosely because we'll need this to adjust the preload on the front of the roof rack in a little while. That'll be a step for later on. So for now, we're just going to get it loosely bolted on. Oh, also, ignore the fact that there's some weather strip missing here. The previous roof rack required that to be cut, but yours should not be cut at this point. All right, we're going to repeat on the other side. Before we put the front fairing on, we're going to put this extrusion on the back side of the front fairing to reinforce it. So I've already put most of these in, but at this point you're going to take the extrusion slide nuts and put them in, and you can either measure it out or kind of eyeball it. We want these to line up with the holes in the fairing. Then I'm going to set it on top and use the bolts in kit number 175A front fairing hardware. You're going to use these short little 1/2 inch 1/4 20 bolts and some of the supplied red Loctite. Okay, we've got all these tightened down. The last thing to do before we put the fairing on is put this edge trim on this leading edge. So it's got some 3M adhesive with these little red strips. So we're going to put it in place and then peel the backing off. Next, we're going to put the fairing on. This is a good spot to have a helper so you don't accidentally scratch or dent the roof. So, here you go. We're using the 1 inch long 1/4 20 bolts from the hardware kit and a flat washer under each one. Next, we're going to install all the extrusions and the rear fairing before we tighten the rack down to the roof. For this installation, we're going to use all the extrusions. There are 7 more after using the one in the fairing, so we're going to put one in every set of double holes here. Now, just to reiterate, you can put these wherever you want. You can use the slots to fine-tune your spacing, but we have 7 sets of holes and 7 extrusions, so we're just going to use that equal spacing. The last actual piece that goes on is the rear fairing. So grab this and the hardware for the rear fairing kit, and it just bolts on like the other stuff. We're going to use a bolt and a washer, and then on the inside we'll use another flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut. If you're going to be putting lights in the rear fairing, I highly recommend doing it before you put the fairing on, just to reduce the chance of messing up the body of your rig. Next, we're going to tighten down the fairing and the rear extrusion. It's a 5/32 Allen and a 7/16 wrench or socket on the inside. Okay, all the extrusions are tightened down, and the rear fairing. We left the front fairing because it's got some adjustability in it. I don't want to tighten it down until we've got this set exactly where we want it. So now we're going to tighten down the 4 rear mounts. So we've already gone through and kind of centered this thing left to right. This is your chance to do that. Once you've got that done, just go through and tighten up these bolts on the back two and the middle two mounts. The next step is to adjust the height overall of the rack. So I'm going to tighten down the middle one first, then pivot up the rear to make this gap match, and then lastly we'll do the front. So I've got, it's hard to say, to see in the video I'm sure, but it's about 3/8 of an inch gap right here. I'm going to set that, come back here, do the same thing, and repeat on the other side. So this front mount is putting pressure on the roof of the vehicle. To achieve that pressure, we're going to preload it by lifting up on the rack and pushing down on the mount while somebody else tightens it down. So we'll check the gap after we get it snug. Yeah, it's great. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side. With the front mounts tightened down, the last thing to do is adjust the front fairing. On this particular installation, we've determined it looks best all the way down, so we're going to let it slide all the way down on both sides and tighten it up. At this point, you're probably going to want to put your accessories on, whether that's your light bar, some backup lights, or the grab handles, or the tent. And a quick note on a tent, we've found that it's easier to mark your spacing, pick which bars are going to mount the tent, take the bars out, mount them to the underside of the tent, then set the whole unit on and just put these side bolts in. That's a lot easier than trying to reach under there and start your bolts with the whole thing assembled. Another thought on an awning, these holes are placed where they are intentionally. The L bracket that comes with the awning should be able to go in here, making the installation a little easier. And that wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been an installation of our 5th Gen 4Runner aluminum DRIFTR series roof rack. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at backwoodsAdventureMods.com.